I'm here to tell you that regardless of what region you're from or what rank you play in, it's time to start playing RYZE because this champion is perfectly balanced. I never thought I'd say this about any champion league, but RYZE is in such a good spot that it's very much worth learning because the time that you put into RYZE is not going to be wasted. He's not going to be nerfed in the near future. He's pretty much kind of even win rate in solo queue, occasionally picked in pro play. And the biggest advantage of playing RYZE is he's become kind of the new Orianna. He's got no bad matchups, very, very good at neutralizing champions that outrange him by just pushing the wave, similar to Taliyah, with the main difference between them being that RYZE is a setup champion, and his pairings with jungle are things like Kindred, Graves, Viego, Nefiri, whereas Taliyah wants to be set up and she likes, the Jarvans, the Xin Zhaos, the Wukongs, which are all getting nerfed in the next patch. So RYZE is a lot more future-proof to learn if you're looking at a stable roaming mid option. Now in this game, we're playing RYZE into Echo against none other than Coach Curtis himself. In this matchup, like any other melee matchups, what you're going to want to do is abuse your level 1. The reason why RYZE is very strong is because his E has a 3.5 second cooldown, as well as having Phase Rush to help you disengage from a bad trade level 1 or get a couple extra autos on the enemy. You can see here, I come out to try and stop the Echo from spotting the Raptors, get my Raptor ward as well, and deny him from entering the lane. We get a couple of really nice trades off. For free, pretty much just getting free damage on our E and our autos. We give him the emotes, get back to lane. First thing we're going to do against every melee champion, we're going to auto attack the middle range creep or the back range creep, whatever gets the minions focus fire, and we're going to make sure that these champions like Katarina, like Zed, like Echo cannot get 3 last hits with their first ability. We'll focus on clearing our melee creeps, and then right after we clear the melee creeps, we can start actively trading him. It's very, very important that you posture in front of your wave and not behind your wave. That's probably the biggest mistake that I see people make on RYZE. Your champion is just unbeatable level 1 because of the low cooldowns. So it doesn't matter if you take the aggro. You want the enemy to handshake a trade into you because you know you're going to win the extended trade by running them down with Phase Rush or using that same Phase Rush to disengage and dodge extra shots from the range creeps chasing you, dropping the aggro faster. Usually you take W level 2 in melee matchups because you want to use the slow again to guarantee a couple of autos. But also if you catch the enemy rooted on your range creeps, taking aggro from your creeps, that is your best solo kill angle. And it's often better to actually lead with W E auto instead of going EW auto. You might think, well, why would you do that? The main reason is that you can proc your Phase Rush faster. It's actually faster to cast WE auto and Phase Rush away and end the trade because your main enemy in the early game is actually not the enemy melee champion, but the creeps themselves. Because your armor is relatively low compared to a lot of champions on RYZE. You want to avoid aggro as much as possible. Here we can see our Trundle is getting invaded. The enemy Trundle is getting invaded by our Kha'Zix, so we lean down. But keep in mind, we never kind of fully commit because that's a big mistake you can make against melee champs. If you walk into a bush that they are camping, that is pretty much the only way you can lose the lane. So try and stay relatively close to the middle of the lane. And if you can, if the enemy is full health, it's always better to do these kind of combos that you can see me doing. Let's actually review that together. I think that's important. So when the enemy champion jumps in, you just want to not use your roots if they're full health. You want to just use your max damage combo, which is always going to be QEQ or QWQ You basically don't waste your root. You want to use that empowered E damage if you can. We can E him and the wave and bounce the Q through the wave onto Echo. So we get a little bit of a chunk. And now we don't have to use our root because he's already used his dash. So we're just going to W QEQ. It's very, very important. You don't need to land the root on RYZE to land your abilities. It was a little while back, a couple of patches ago, they buffed the base slow on the W, and that is more than enough early game. Before the opponent gets boots, W slow is more than enough to land your abilities. You should only ever use your stun on the enemy if they're tanking minions, like here. The Echo overcommits the trade on me. You can see that I'm actually holding all of my spells. That's an important skill as well on RYZE. You actually want to kind of hold your abilities, invite the trade, and then do your full combo. Because if you count your abilities, you've got Q, W, Q, EQ, plus you've got maybe 2 autos in between that you can weave. That's 7 instances of damage that is almost, coming out straight away. It's just a quick combo, 1 to 2 seconds. You've got 7 instances of damage, level 3, level 4. The opponent kind of gets caught off guard. You can pretty much one-shot anybody from half health if they're tanking your wave. So that was a nice little solo kill. We come back into lane. I would recommend always buying Mana Crystal on RYZE. Mana Crystal tier is a really good base. RYZE is one of the few champions in the game that actually has mana scalings on his spells. So your spells genuinely do more damage if you get more mana, which is kind of interesting. I think the only other one is Kassadin that has that, but that's obviously his ultimate, and that's doesn't really kick in till later on in the game. And let's actually look at that as well. I think that's an important point. This is kind of how League has evolved from, you know, the 2022, 2023 meta to now. Whenever you have a wave like this, back in the old days, you would just always freeze it, right? You would just kill these two melee creeps. You'd leave these three alive. You'd freeze it. The opponent would go up. You'd ping for a gank. You'd gank them. You know, the lane's frozen, yada, yada, yada. But now, because of home guards, the addition of home guards pre, 12 minutes or whatever it is, you always get home guards when you go back to base. Your opponent has the option to just insta-basing and roaming to another lane, or they have the option to potentially just take a bad recall, quote-unquote bad recall, and come back and not lose too many creeps. So freezing waves is fake. You never want to freeze waves on mid, but what you want to do is you want to pull one minion, like I'm doing here. If you pull this one minion, you're going to set up a slow push. So if the opponent leaves and he goes for a roam, you can instantly crash a big wave into the tower, get a plate back, and get a lot of gold in return. If he doesn't roam, then you basically have the same position that you would in a freeze in terms of forcing the opponent to walk up, and you can get that exact same trade. All right, the biggest difference is that with a freeze, if the opponent roams, your wave is not big enough to make a meaningful impact on his tower to counter his roam. You know, you're not going to get a plate. You're not going to deny that many creeps by freezing compared to crashing the entire wave. And most importantly, you won't get a roam timer in return, because if I have a big stacking wave, I stack up a nice big wave while he's going for a roam. Then after he's done with the roam, he goes back to mid. Now it's my turn to roam. So I got a CS lead by staying mid and not leaving. And then I've crashed a massive wave and I can go for my own roam. That's not going to cost me anything. Another important thing is you want to always try and be ready to harass the opponent on the tower whenever possible. So as soon as you get back to lane, if you have nothing to do, you can see the first thing I did here was actually place this ward. It's very, very important. When you have nothing to do, if it's a big wave pushing into you, don't walk up to the big wave. There's nothing to gain by walking up here for me. I can only potentially get ganked by the support or the jungler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this ward down, and this ward is actually going to be very big profit for me down the line, because once I push this wave, you can see I only have a couple of creeps. If I go to ward right now, if I had zero vision and I went to ward right now, he would be able to catch this entire wave, and when I come back, there's nothing for me to harass him with under tower. Whereas I actually have an opportunity to either deny creeps or get some free damage on him, which I spectacularly mess up. Taking aggro, getting stuck in the the Echo W. You know, it happens. We're only human after all. But the idea was correct, right? The placing of the ward as soon as I go back to lane gave me that opportunity to walk up. The execution wasn't perfect, but that's okay. You can see the other great thing about RYZE is, again, because you have Realm Warp, but also you're a champion that doesn't really need items. As soon as you get tier, as soon as you get a Mana Crystal, you could just buy boots. You can just upgrade to tier 2 boots, really. And you can take these recalls whenever you want. You can see that Home Guard buff at the bottom for me. It just makes it so much faster for me to get back into lane. But also, if you wanted to, you can always ult back into lane. The advantage of ulting back into lane is that you prevent your opponent from having a turn. If I didn't ult here, I wouldn't be here to contest this wave. The Echo could potentially get a free recall off and lose absolutely nothing, or he could go and roam to another lane. Let's also take a look at that trade, because I think that is pretty important there. When you trade on RYZE, you want to input micro movement commands between your abilities. So you want to try and E the opponent, and then right when you get your phase rush, you're doing these little clicks in between the orders. These clicks are very important because they allow you to land your Q through the wave without having to flux it, obviously. So try and always remember that. Try and always keep moving in between your abilities, in between your combos. Don't just stand still and go Q, Q, W, Q unless you're getting face checked. You always want to stay on the move. You can see there we predicted where he's going to base. Pretty common spot there. I think most of the time, if your opponent isn't on this side, they're probably kind of hugging that wall, and you can stop them from recalling by just throwing out a random max range Q. Your Q range is actually surprisingly long on RYZE, and it doesn't really cost any mana, 34. So it's just always worth kind of seeing if you can blind cancel the base. If you do find your opponent greeting, you know, eventually they have to take a bad recall. So it's important that you also clear the wave correctly on RYZE. The two things you need to look for to be as fast as possible with nuking the wave is you want to Q the front minion, then you want to E the middle one, right? We want to E this minion so it spreads to all three of them, and then we want to also make sure we're auto-attacking the whole time in between, and we're spreading out auto-attack damage between the minions very well. We don't want to waste an EQ if it's only a single melee creep or a double melee creep. We always want to kind of use our EQ on the back wave. Another thing that's important is when your opponent is throwing, you know, weird spells like Yasuo Q, or if they have Yone Q or Echo W, whatever it is, you don't want to just walk away. Just because he's casted a spell, if you walk away, then he's just essentially zoning you off the wave and giving himself the chance to farm for free. What you want to do is you want to actually bait him to jump in, and then click away at the last second, so he thinks he's going to land it, but then he doesn't land it, and that kind of forces him to walk up, and Kha'Zix gets a nice and easy gank. Again, another small attention to detail here. We put the E on him as soon as we can. We put the E on him, because if we flash EW, it actually gives your opponent time to react, because your root doesn't actually root until the E connects. So if the opponent flashes away instantly when you go flash EW, it's just going to be a trade of flashes, right? And even worse than that, you're probably going to take aggro and you're going to lose a bunch of health for free, and he's going to get away. But because we landed our E straight away, so your goal is whenever you're prepping dives, you just land your E, put your E on like this, and now you just wait, let your jungle get a little bit closer, and then you can instantly flash W. There's no reaction time, instant root, he's dead. So that's kind of the easiest way to set up ganks on RYZE. You can also do this by fluxing the enemy through the creeps. If you're not close enough to E him, you can try to E the front minions if you can. You can E through these minions, and then you can drop another E, and it's going to spread to him. And then you could flash W your opponent and get a nice and easy kill. Another important thing on RYZE is never grief your tempo. Never overstay for plates. Your auto attacks really don't do too much to the tower, and even if you have phase rush, if the enemy jungler comes from behind, it's very, very difficult to escape it. So I try and avoid taking plates when I can, always prioritizing recalling on time, being in lane to match my laner. If he goes for a roam, RYZE is fantastic at matching it. Even if you're behind by a screen or two screens, you can always make up for it with your ultimate. You can see here, we decide to go Archangels first. We're going to be building into Archangels, into Seraph's Embrace, instead of going Rod of Ages. There's no real recipe to this. It's sort of based on feel. If you have 1300, I'd say you can buy Catalyst and be happy with that. It doesn't really matter if you go Rod of Ages first or if you go Archangels. The benefit of going Archangels first is that obviously the mana will stack up a little bit faster once you upgrade the item. But also, you are delaying your Rod of Ages, which means that you're going to get your level up from level 15 to 16 at 10 stacks, instead of getting a level up, you know, from maybe level 13 to 14, which just gives you more XP overall, right? Because levels are worth more XP the higher you get. But obviously delays your spike as well, so it means that, you know, 10, 15, 20 minutes in the game, you're going to have less gold efficiency on your Rod of Ages because it's only going to have a couple of stacks instead of 10. We can see the enemy team is starting up this objective, so we're very, very strong. We saw that Echo did a cheese roam top lane, so we're like, okay, well, Echo definitely based after doing the roam because he got some kills, but then he actually didn't. We made a big mistake there. We thought that, look, Echo spent his turn on top lane. Now he has to go back mid. He has to respect. He has to catch the wave so he doesn't fall too far behind. But actually, he double turns. So he goes for the top roam and then he stays. He greeds. Maybe he got a plant there. That one really comes down to just not moving my camera. I think that's why it's very, very important when your lane roams. You don't have to follow them. You can do exactly what I did, which is just push the next wave, get the plate, get advantage for yourself. But always shift your camera at least once on the tail end of the play, on the tail end of the roam. You don't need to see what cooldowns they use. You just need to see the effective HP value of your laner. And you need to make an educated guess. Is my laner basing? Is he running back to mid? Or is he doing some crazy shit like, you know, diving between the top tower when my top laner TP's back in or something like that? You need to make an educated guess whether you think he's going to base or not. There, if I actually checked him and saw his HP values, I'd know that, you know, he has enough HP to contest these grubs. Instead of going and trying to overforce at the grubs, I could just push the next wave and really force him to come back to mid and defend his tower. But that's okay. Sometimes against these melee champions, this will happen. Your opponent will find a time at a roam. They do have dashes. They have a great gank setup. It's very, very easy for champions like this to roam. There's not much you can do every single time. But again, if your opponent leaves, your main goal on RYZE is just to catch the wave. As soon as it gets to the middle of the lane, you just want to instantly catch the wave. Obviously, if something is very, very close to you, within the vicinity of mid lane, you're more than happy to contribute, but you want to make sure you don't die. This is very, very important. Another important thing there is I rooted Echo when he procced his passive. This is something you can do against any melee champ, really, especially Yone Yasuo. If Yone Yasuo has a Q3, if you just root them as Yasuo Q3s you, he actually can't take his ult. And the same thing with Echo, you know, if you root Echo as he gets his passive, the entire duration of his massive movement speed buff, he is rooted. He's standing still. He's wasting, a big part of his kit. So that's definitely an important skill to have. Another thing you should consider when playing RYZE is grabbing an early Dark Seal. You can see how you're usually a part of a lot of skirmishes. You might not necessarily get the kills, but you'll be there to sort of just throw down your EW route, and that's your job done. Extra Dark Seal stack. There's a lot of gold efficiency added to the table as well. Here again, we are RYZE ulting because we know that Echo has a turn, and we want to make sure that we can at least be on the same tempo as my jungler. We can see that we have a lot of vision bot side in their jungle, so we're pinging off the cannon because that's the only place that Echo could roam. And we're going to be catching this wave very high, very aggressively, because again, we want him to show, we want him to prove that he's not roaming. And if he is, we'll hit his tower. Echo's used a lot of his abilities here, so we could consider trading him if we can. Another small thing there that's important to look at, let's actually look at that because I think that's a key part of trading on RYZE. You want to actually put down 2 of your E's on the wave. There's 2 reasons you do it. So I put the E down first, but I have no intention to Q it. The reason why we put this E down is not to push the wave. We have 2 things we can do with it. We can either make it spread to Echo, and once it does spread to Echo, we could potentially go and root him into a full combo, or we can just Q through the wave like this and get our, free chunk of damage on him as well. Now, the other reason we want to do this is if we can get the move speed by having 2 runes, right? Every time you put your E on the wave, you get 1 rune. And when you put the second E down, you'll get a second rune. And when you use a spell after that, you'll get a big move speed boost. So what we could do is we could use these 2 runes to actually close the distance and set ourselves up for a trade. Because if we just walk in a straight line at Echo, 385 to 385 MS, he's just going to click away, or he'll dash away, or he'll Q slow us, whatever it is. He's going to find a way to disengage. So we have to get creative with our passive on the wave to actually get these trades to work for us. So we put the 2 E's on. If it spread to him, that's fantastic. We would have gotten a nice bounce. But regardless, with the move speed we have, we close the distance. You can see there, I'm waiting until the very last second to actually root him because I'm trying to give my jungler more time to get into the fight. And I'm also trying to give Echo a little bit more confidence because if he doesn't see me committing into a trade, he might feel like he has the edge, or maybe his jungler's nearby. I think all of these things are very, very important to do on RYZE. Spam E on the wave, try and get some, bounces through the wave. But regardless, even if you don't get the bounce, you use that move speed buff to close the distance and get a trade-off. Now, I will say in this game specifically, RYZE is kind of faker. I think I had last pick. RYZE phase rush is really, really good against obviously Trundle slow, Echo slow, Mundo slow. A lot of their champions are actually countered by phase rush. So it is one of those games where I am allowed to walk up to the tower and actually just hit it without being afraid of dying to the Trundle, as long as I know Echo can't be there. Because Trundle showed top lane and I see that my Kha'Zix is right behind me, it makes sense to kind of play a little bit aggressive on this wave and see if we can get this full tower. I do have a lot of gold unspent, but I'm kind of waiting for my teleport at the moment, just thinking about how to get the most advantage, the most HP out from Echo before I TP back in on full health, full resources. If you are doing this, you got to be careful, especially against champions that run Ignite. If you're greeding your resources to try and get the most out of your teleport, if you end up dying, it's just really bad to do. Yeah, we got that E off on Echo. We tried to instantly flash root him, but we didn't press out target champion's only key, so we ended up Wing the blue buff. It was a bit unfortunate. Sucks to suck. But that's okay, because at the end of the day, even if Echo dies, or he doesn't die, our goal is to take this mid tower to get Feats of Strength. Feats of Strength is also fantastic on RYZE. I think the most gold efficient Feats of Strength boot in the game is the cooldown boots, Ionian Boots of Lucidity, and that's exactly what we have. We rush that on RYZE every single game. Pen shoes are not great. Do not buy pen shoes. Your options on RYZE are Merc Treads against double AP mid jungle, or Tabbies against double AD. We ended up getting the mid tower, unfortunately not getting the echo kill. But one thing you always got to do is when you get this mid tower, you always want to push one extra wave before basing. Because again, if you push this wave, you are forcing one of the enemy champions to show and limiting, you know, the possibility of the enemy getting a successful roam off when you're doing your base. Again, the big advantage of me doing this build is that when I get Rod of Ages in this game, I will actually hit level 16 straight away, which is a huge power spike for RYZE, because every time you put a point in your ult, your Q damage goes up by a lot. Here we can see that really there's nothing for us to do mid. We've already done the mid tower, so we go bot to try and cover the bot play. Unfortunately, don't get up any kills, and our Yanara ends up dying as well. But if we didn't come here, we'd have to TP anyway to defend the tower. And at least we have kind of ruined their AD carry and support's condition and not allowed them to continually siege our tower. Again, you see that we're double Eing the wave. So important there to double E the wave. I can't stress that. This is the biggest skill that you need to build on RYZE. E the wave, and then the second E on the wave, you can see how it's not. Let's see if it's instant. It's kind of instant, but it's not instant. I'm really waiting for the creeps to line up perfectly so that the bounce spreads. And then once it spreads, again, we have two options. Because we got the phase rush, we could actually just try and run straight in a line towards Kai'Sa, W the Kai'Sa, kill the Kai'Sa. But we choose to get the safer kill, which is the Taric. And once again, you can see there how I choose to not go EQ on the Taric. We go W EQ. Again, it's always better to go W EQ because it's faster. If you go EW, you give your opponent the chance to flash away before your W connects, and then there's no way you can close the distance. But also potentially, he could buffer the stun before your next Q comes out because the animation's a little bit slower going EWQ. A little bit of a gank from Trundle, but at this point we're not too concerned with it because we have Seraphs, so really there's nobody that can kill us in this game. This is a nice part about playing against RYZE against these melee mid laners. It doesn't matter if the jungler comes, it doesn't matter if the support comes, if their mid comes. Really the only person that can kill you in these games as RYZE is their AD carry, if you take a lot of focus. My bard decides to dive here, we follow up on it, and once again you can see how right here, it's just so important. The ability usage is so important. Do not use your root straight away on RYZE. Always hold your root and try to max damage combo first. Try to just land as many QEQs as you can and keep the enemy fluxed. And then once the enemy gets to about half health, that's kind of the sweet spot where you want to root them, QEQ, couple autos in between, phase rush. Maybe you can space forward for another EQ. Maybe you can't. You try and kill them from that half HP threshold. But if you use your stun too early, if you use your root too early, the opponent will just run away and you'll have nothing to chase him with. We end up getting the wave and the tower, recalling, gradually building into our next item, which in most cases, I think Death Cap is the best third item on RYZE, because if you get Death Cap and level 16 around the same time, you are literally doing 1k crits. It's very, very satisfying on the wave. It shows up with the 1k crit modifier. It's kind of like when you build Collector on something like Akshan or Tristana, and you get the last hit with Collector and it pops up with the 999 white damage number. It's very, very satisfying. And the best part about RYZE as well is you can cheat a lot of side waves. What I mean by cheat is that you can catch waves which normally you probably can't catch, but because you have Realm Warp you can. You just need to be aware of people's positions on the map. And if you have an inkling, if you have a feeling that you're getting ganked, as soon as you see a champion, you can instantly press ult and kind of get away, get out of there. And the enemy team tries to make a play on my bard, which is not a good idea to play towards the side of the fed Sidelaner, because obviously he's going to have... he's going to be a lot stronger in these skirmishes. Once again, you know, look at that. The root is very, very late. We hold our root till the last second to make sure that the Echo can't ult. It's the same concept against Zed, you know, Akali, any other champions. You just want to hold your root till the very end. We tried to actually ult the Rift Herald. You can do that on RYZE. You can actually ult the Rift Herald to reposition it instead of driving it through the enemy base. This is very, very effective if the Rift Herald is low. So let's say that this Rift is at maybe 1,000 health. If we drive it through the base, there's a chance that the jungler smites it, you know, and then we're stuck in the middle of the base and we're just feeding like a noob. What you could do is, right here, for example, if we had our ult, we could instantly teleport this Rift Herald with our ultimate to mid and get an extra charge mid. Whichever lane there is less champions in, you can do this. So a lot of really cool things you can do with the RYZE ult. You can obviously escape yourself. You can save your teammates. You can also stand in the RYZE ult and press the B button. If you press recall in the RYZE ult, you'll be in it, but you actually won't teleport. So pressing B basically cancels the RYZE ult if you stand in it. We decide to greed here because we're so far ahead. We feel like if this Echo walks up, he just gets one shot. If we just fit in one extra auto attack there before doing our full combo, there wouldn't be a chance of him flashing away or ulting or anything like that. We end up getting the kill anyway, but still not really worthwhile usage of our flash to get a kill on a 1 in 6 Echo. But whenever you get a kill like this, always make sure you push the next wave. You want to make sure your wave crashes into the tower, especially if you're winning. There's really no excuse to denying yourself, 100, 120, 130 gold for free wave. But when you do greed for these waves, just expect that the opponents will try to punish you. So don't just base on the spot. Kind of walk back a little bit. Think about where they're going to be coming from. They could be checking you from this bush. They could look through lane, but it's very unlikely that they would walk all the way around this bottom side and actually find you there. And we can see top lane's having a bit of a tussle here. There's no wards for us to TP to or minions in the top lane, so we decide to TP mid. Now, it's very, very important that you sort of give yourself options when you go for these TPs. Because I TP'd in between mid and top, I have the option of answering the mid lane and defending the mid tower, or committing to this top play, securing Atacon, securing the top tier 1. We decided to do that, but if you end up committing your TP and your ult to the same play on RYZE, there's always going to be an opportunity for the enemy team to trade, so you have to keep that in mind. You always want to kind of use one but not the other. You want to TP to a play, get a kill, and then recall ult back to the other lane to defend the tower, or to catch the wave and not lose too much farm. Here, obviously, Kennen was forced to come mid and defend our tower, which means that now we're going to lose the bot tower. So me double spending my ult and my TP drops the bot tower, which has a bounty on it, which is a little bit of comeback gold for the enemy. Was it worth it? Probably, but it's just something you have to keep in mind in a closer game state. You realistically don't want to commit both of your teleport abilities to just one play, to just winning one lane. Here, we try and take some space in the enemy jungle, because they're very, very strong. There's another thing about RYZE is he just eats Raptors like no tomorrow. I mean, there's no other champion that eats Raptors better than RYZE. He just insta-kills it with his QEQ. Pretty much as soon as you get your Runepage and Seraphs, you can start taking Raptors for free. And we're kind of just trying to cheese the enemy jungle. We are ahead on tempo of the rest of our team, so that's something you do have to keep in mind. This is a 2v3 here. If we draw a line through our champions, we can see that everybody else is pretty far behind us. So if we get into a fight in this jungle, we could potentially be outnumbered. So we're just looking to sort of deny the camps, mess with the enemy team, but you can see how we're never like overcommitting, past a certain line. We know that we're down numbers, but we're so strong that we want to contest everything. We want to contest every jungle camp, every ward, every bush, without fully committing to it and dying. That's kind of what in pro play we call taking space. It's where you make the opponents pay with health for doing basic actions like clearing a bush or taking a Krug camp. Once you're ahead, this is the only way to decisively close out the game. If you just keep farming, then your gold lead diminishes, because a 5,000 lead at 20 minutes is a lot bigger than a 5,000 lead at 40 minutes. So we ended up pushing the bot wave, and we're going to take a recall. We have a lot of gold to spend, and you can see here, as soon as you take a recall from one side of the map, you just instantly flip the map, apply the pressure elsewhere. What we should be doing is obviously going topside and setting up the top side, but then I see, oh wait, the dragon is up. Maybe we should go to the dragon instead. It's a soul. Even though this is the only sort of easy objective on the map, the top tier 2 tower, we can't really play for that. We'll just play for soul. We're even pinging our Kennen off as well. We're saying, Kennen, look, this top tower doesn't matter, this top wave doesn't matter, we actually just want to play for the dragon. The earlier you get to the dragon, the more bushes your opponents have to clear, and every single bush your opponent should be paying a health price for it. You can see our Kha'Zix ends up getting caught, which is not the best, not ideal, but again, because we have all this space, I want you to just look at the map, look at the mini-map, look at how much vision we have. So many bushes that the opponents have to walk through. Even though we don't have smite, even in an even game state, you could still justify playing these bushes. All you want to do is make the opponent face check, boom, this Taric just lost his flash and half his health before the fight even happens, right? And that's the power of vision, that's the power of holding space. You want to put the right champions in the right spot, and even if you're down 2v5, 3v5, 4v5, as long as you use your spells, walk back, disengage, that's just free damage. And you can very easily make up for a man advantage if you control the space around the objective. Now we can see the dragon's already spawned. Even if there's a mid-wave, if the objective already spawned, that mid-wave doesn't matter too much. You always want to kind of lean towards the objective, and if the opponent goes to the mid wave, just drop your tower and do the dragon instead. Commit to the dragon, the baron, or the rift herald, whatever it is. Another nice thing is just kind of preemptively ulting on RYZE. You want to, when you're chasing people, you just want to ult as early as possible, because the cast time does take quite a while for it to go off. We ended up winning the fight. At this point, we're just kind of beating them with our wallets. Even if we're down a player or even 2 players, they just can't kill us, really. They can't kill the RYZE. Yunara does a ton of damage. I mean, Yunara is just a broken champion here. We kind of egoed it a little bit, but we know that we have zhonyas, so we're not in any trouble. We want to just bait them in. Another interesting part there is we actually queue the minion. That's something you can do just for min-maxing your uptime, damage uptime. You can see here, because the minion has a flux on it, we can actually queue the minion, and the minion will bounce to Taric, and then, you know, we can queue the minion before we can queue the Taric, because Taric is obviously golden. So it's a little bit faster. If we queued the Taric, you know, maybe the Flux would have timed out, or maybe he could have flashed it or something like that, but because we queued the minion, it always bounces into him. Not a situation where it really made a difference, but I think these micro things are what's most fun about RYZE. You do the same combo, you press the same buttons. It looks like you're doing the same thing every single game, but there's so many little variations depending on what champions you play against, if they have a spell shield. Yeah, the enemy team tries to commit on us. We do kind of a mediocre zhonyas flash at this point. We realize there's no escaping it. We have to man fight, and we one-shot the Echo. That's the satisfying thing about RYZE in the late game. If you get one combo off, pretty much as soon as you hit level 16, you're basically guaranteed to one-shot squishies. You always have the Seraphs as well that people don't really consider when they all in you. They just see that RYZE is low. They try to get the kill, but the Seraphs ends up saving you more often than not. And it's an easy close. That's why I like playing RYZE. It feels like you can sort of start the fights very easily with your ultimate. If the enemy team is out of position and you feel like you have more people, you can just ult forward, get an advantageous fight. If you think that, you know, it's a 5v5, but the enemy team loses front to back, you can just stand in the front, EW their front line, they engage on you, you press your zhonyas, you're fine. And obviously, if you need to dive people as well, if you have a dive comp, RYZE can do that as well. You can just flash forward like you saw, flash EW route, QEQ, the AD carry is dead. So it's definitely a champion worth putting time into, and I'd highly recommend that you try it.